Welcome to the deep dive. Ever flip through the Bible, see those long lists of kings, and kind of wonder what the point is?
Yeah, they can seem a bit dense sometimes.
Right. Well, today we're really digging into one specific chapter, 2 Kings 15. It's packed with kings from both Judah and Israel.
And it might feel like just ancient history, but honestly, there are some incredibly relevant insights tucked away in there. Things about leadership, obedience.
And sort of where God fits into all the human drama. That's what we're looking at.
Exactly. We've been looking closely at this chapter, thinking about what it meant back then and, well, what it might mean for us today.
So the mission for this deep dive is basically to pull out those key lessons: leadership, faithfulness, God's sovereignty that still speak to us.
That's the plan, to see how these old stories can actually strengthen our faith now.
Okay, let's jump in then. 2 Kings 15 starts in Judah, the southern kingdom, with King Azariah. He's also called Uzziah.
Right. And he became king really young, just 16.
And reigned for a remarkably long time, 52 years. The text says he did what was right in the sight of the Lord. Sounds pretty good, on the surface anyway.
It does. 52 years of doing right. That suggests stability, especially when you compare it to what was happening up north in Israel.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
But there's always a but, isn't there?
There often is. And here, it's a significant one.
The high places. I knew it! It says, nevertheless, the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and burned incense there.
Exactly. So even this king, who's generally described positively, didn't fully deal with this issue.
What exactly were these high places? Why were they such a big deal?
Well, they were essentially local worship sites, often left over from, Canaanite practices before the Israelites. People would go there to worship idols, not the true God.
Okay, so Azariah might be following God personally, but he's letting idolatry continue among the people by leaving these places active.
Precisely. And the consequences for him personally were, well, severe. The scripture says God struck him with leprosy.
Leprosy. Wow. So he lived out his days isolated.
Yeah, in a separate house. His son Jotham had to take over the actual running of the kingdom.
That's sobering. Decades of good rule, but this one area of, incomplete obedience, it cost him dearly.
It really highlights the seriousness of even partial disobedience, especially for a leader.
It makes you think, doesn't it? What are the high places in our own lives? The things we tolerate, maybe think, aren't a huge issue.
That's such a relevant connection to make, because they might not be physical altars today, Raik.
Right.
But what do we put before God?
Like our careers, maybe? Pushing so hard we compromise on ethics.
Or maybe clinging to relationships we know aren't healthy for us spiritually. It's those areas where we kind of know what's right, but we don't fully go there. We hold back a piece.
That definitely gives me something to chew on. Okay, so while Judah had this relative stability under Azariah, despite the leprosy,
The story shifts north to Israel, and it's like night and day.
total chaos, right?
Yeah.
Just king after king, boom, boom, boom.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
While Azariah is clocking up 52 years, Israel is just churning through rulers. It's incredibly unstable.
So first up is Zechariah. How long did he last?
A whole 6 months. Then assassinated by Shallum.
6 months. Okay, so Shallum takes over.
And he lasts 1 month, assassinated by Menahem.
1 month. This is like a revolving door of violence.
It really is.
Mhm.
Menahem manages 10 years, which is longer, comparatively.
Does he break the cycle? Does he do what's right?
Nope. The text is clear. Did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, kept up the same old idolatry started way back by Jeroboam. He also had to pay off the Assyrian king, Pul, basically buying protection.
So more evil and foreign powers getting involved. Okay, Menahem dies naturally, but then his son...
Pekahia, 2 years, then assassinated by Pekah, one of his own officers.
Unbelievable. So Pekah takes the throne.
He lasts longer, 20 years, but again, did what was evil. And during his reign, the Assyrians, under Tiglath-Pileser this time, invade, take land, carry people off into exile.
So things are getting progressively worse for Israel.
Definitely. And Pekah, he ends up assassinated too, by Hoshea. It's just this relentless pattern.
And that recurring phrase for all these Israeli kings is just chilling. He did what was evil, departing not from the sins of Jeroboam.
It really hammers home the spiritual state of the northern kingdom. Consistent rejection of God by the leadership.
And the contrast with Judah, even with Azariah's failing, is stark.
It is. You see this direct link in Israel between unfaithfulness and chaos, instability, and ultimately judgment.
Makes you think about the impact of leadership, doesn't it? When leaders consistently turn from what's right.
The consequences ripple outwards, affecting everyone. It's true then, it's true now.
And it brings us back to that shared problem, even in Judah, the high places again. Because even Jotham, Azariah's son, who also did right.
He didn't remove them either. It seems like such a deeply rooted compromise.
Why do you think that was so hard? Was it political pressure? Complacency?
It could be a mix of things. Maybe it was just easier not to rock the boat, you know, popular opinion. But it shows how insidious partial obedience can be. Like thinking, well, I'm doing pretty good overall.
Oh, this little thing doesn't matter, but clearly it did.
It hindered complete blessing and faithfulness. It's a warning against settling.
But amidst all this human messiness, the good, the bad, the incomplete, there's still God's hand at work, isn't there?
Absolutely. That's a crucial layer here. Remember God's promise to Jehu, an earlier king of Israel.
That his dynasty would last 4 generations on the throne.
Exactly. And who was the last king in that sequence? Zechariah.
The one who lasted 6 months before being assassinated.
That's him. So even in the middle of all that chaos and short reigns, God's specific word, his promise, came true right on schedule.
Wow. So even when everything looks like it's falling apart from a human perspective.
God's larger plan is still unfolding. His sovereignty isn't threatened by human failure or political turmoil.
That's actually really encouraging. So thinking about us today, how does exploring this chapter, strengthen our faith? It's not like we have kings in high places in the same way.
Well, maybe not literally, but the principles are timeless. First, seeing the consequences play out, stability linked to obedience in Judah, mostly. Chaos to disobedience in Israel reinforces that God's ways work. His character is consistent.
So trusting his commands isn't just about arbitrary rules, but about what actually leads to flourishing.
You could say that. His justice and his love are intertwined. And seeing the mess in Israel really underscores the need for principled, godly leadership in our communities, our churches, even in ourselves.
Right. It makes you value integrity.
Definitely. And Azariah's story, the long reign, doing right, but then the leprosy because of the high places, it's a caution against pride, isn't it?
Yeah, don't get complacent even when things are going well. Stay humble, stay fully obedient.
Exactly. Don't think you've arrived spiritually. There's always vigilance needed.
But maybe the biggest encouragement is that point about God's sovereignty. Seeing his promise to Jehu fulfilled amidst the craziness.
That's a powerful reminder for us when our own world feels chaotic or uncertain. God is still on the throne. His ultimate purposes will stand.
That really is an anchor. We can trust him even when we don't understand everything that's happening.
Yes, and maybe Judah's relative stability, imperfect as it was, shows that striving for faithfulness, even if we stumble, built a foundation for more peace than living on constant rebellion.
So wrapping up this deep dive into 2 Kings 15, we've seen quite a contrast. Judah's long reigns, Israel's turmoil, the impact of leadership choices.
The danger of those high places,
Mm-hmm.
the areas of compromise. And through it all, God's steady, sovereign hand.
It really leaves you thinking.
It does. And maybe the question to sit with is this. Reflecting on these accounts, these ancient kings and their choices, where in your own life can you aim for a more complete faithfulness?
Where can we lean more fully into trusting God's big plan, knowing he's in control even when things feel shaky?
Exactly. How can these thousands of years old stories actually strengthen your faith today, reminding you that God is consistent, he is involved, and he's ultimately sovereign?
Definitely powerful stuff to consider. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.